even up there too. Then the rod cap back on, tighten it up to whatever the torque specs are supposed to be. I don't use a torque wrench on any engine, even if it's for a car or a bike. I just got lots of experience and I've never had one let go that I've put back together. Rotate the crankshaft around a couple times, make sure everything spins freely without binding before you decide to reassemble the motor. Give one last check that your cam points line up so you know you're not going to go wrong and for sure it's going to start. And be careful when putting your top cover back on, because there's that little gear in there which drives the governor when the weights fly out and pushes on this, and it's plastic. You want to make sure when it's dropping on that at least drops down into the grooves and lines up right so it doesn't shear off the plastic teeth if you're forcing that cover on. Remove all oil and debris and gasket material off the head and this surface too, so that your new head gasket's going to seal better. And of course, if you see lots of carbon, clean that up, and of course this thing needs a new spark plug too. That's the governor thing I was talking about. Some engines of course have something that looks similar, and it's the oil slinger. It has to do with the oil pumping mechanism. So, new gasket's on, and I just got to finish removing little bits of the old gasket. It took a little bit of wiggling of the crankshaft back and forth to get that governor gear to line up, but now the cover dropped back down safely and we're all set to put the bolts back in. Of course, go back and forth and tighten them all down evenly in a couple stages. Key is back in. Now put the flywheel back on, and make sure whenever you put a flywheel back on any engine it's very tight, or the flywheel key breaks itself as soon as you start it. Now I'm going to put the head back on before attempting to put into the push rods that open the valves. And when I do put the push rods in, I can just move the rocker arms out of the way. But unfortunately, I'll show you how to do the next step to get the push rods on, and maybe without even adjusting them. Okay, I've got the head bolts all in so that the head can move back and forth 1/8 of an inch. Now if I pull the head all the way back, leave the gap there, I put the same push rod in the same place it originally came out. So this was the top one, and that end originally came out from that end. And I slip it all the way in until it sits in the little pocket of the pusher thing, which is like the lifter. And when I get them in there, I'll have to use two hands and shut the camera off, and then I move my rockers over and I set them back on so they're touching them. Then I can tighten down the head, and then when it's all properly torqued I can check my valve clearance afterwards when it's set to TDC compression and see if I need to readjust the valves or not. So it is already set to TDC compression, so it's not trying to push the valves open when I'm going to put the head back on. They're just sitting there, the head's just sitting there, and now it's ready to start torquing the head down. Then check the valve clearance after. Torque the head down to specifications in a crisscross manner, and do it in about 3 stages so you can clamp it all down evenly. They're torqued. Look at that horrible spark plug. Gee whiz, it's hard to believe this thing was running when he brought it here. Just about to die, I guess. So now you have to reinstall the magneto, and you make it as close to the magnets as you can without actually touching them, and it doesn't matter how rusty things are, it works just as well. That looks pretty damn close to me, so do a full rotation to make sure there's no interference. Now watch your valves, see what they're doing. Rotate it to TDC compression, and of course that's going to be where the magnets are. Of course there's 2 different TDCs. If it's not right the first time, you just do one complete rotation. So now I'm checking the gap, and there's about, feels like about 18 thou gap, so that's excessive. I don't know what it's exactly supposed to be, but I think it's supposed to be somewhere between 5 and 10 thou gap. This one's got a little less, you know. So if you have too much gap on your exhaust, then your compression release, which I showed you, doesn't work. So there's a little set screw in there. So you just hold the set screw and turn this a little bit, and that's how you adjust it. Same thing with the other one. Too tight, then of course you burn out your valves or your motor might not start. Too loose, rattles and hammers and makes lots of noise when it's running. And sometimes I've even seen them so loose that the push rods fall out of the little pockets. So that's how I adjusted them, just with an Allen wrench and a regular wrench. Make sure just everything's snug before you put it back together, but not too tight. Those bolts aren't that strong. Cleaned off the debris around that gasket. It's still in good shape, so I'm going to reuse it, put it back on and torque it evenly too. It wouldn't hurt even if you put a little bit of silicone around there. Alright, that's on. Now don't forget when you put your carb on that heat spacer separator gasket is still there. And make sure your PCV ventilation hose gets put back on the nipple so it doesn't blow oil all over the motor and make smoke in your face while you're pushing it. Air duct cooling cover thing on. And we have random cattage. Hi baby. Need a hug? Come on. Can I have a hug? Thank you. Meow. Aww. I hear you have a mad friend up there. A little goldfinch doesn't like you, right? You're probably going to get swooped. She sure does eat a lot of birds, almost every day. Usually bigger ones than that. But she did get one like that already. Well, back to business. So, before you put that thing on, you got to make sure you get all of this stuff cleaned off so your motor can run effectively cool. So you don't cook your engine, fry your rings, stuff like that. Pressure washer, but if you do that, you got to cover up this. Or compressed air, or a brush and solvent, whatever. So now final assembly. If you notice, the mounting tabs broke off this heat shield or heat air duct cover, so I just welded washers on. So now we're ready to put the plastics back on, and we're ready for a test. So she's all done, less than 2 hours. I'm not sure if this lawnmower has any safety controls to start it, so I've just got it on choke. I'm going to see what happens. And if it does start, it should make some smoke because we still have lots of oil in that cylinder. That was one pull, and I never started it ever in my life. Cool. It's not even smoking. There's a bit of vibration on the deck. There it goes. Absolutely awesome. So, no big deal.